Punk was actually a really progressive, like really great force that could help change the world.
Punk rock legend Joe Keithley.
Joey Keithley. Or in the music world and in radio, we knew him as
Joey Shithead.
Joey Shithead. Joey Shithead.
the leader of D.O.A.
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 You know what? People laugh. I've been DOA for 40 years, and the whole time we fought against racism, greed, war, and sexism. There's a lot of reasons why I ran for politics. I believe in grassroots democracy, where people really have a say and an input into what is going on. The media said I couldn't win, but the people understood my message, and against all odds, I won. People said, a punk rocker in office? How could this happen? And, you know, then people would make jokes, hey, where's your mohawk? Where's your leather jacket? I said, you know what? I didn't bring any of those. But what I did bring was some fresh ideas.
If you really believe in something, you've got to fight for it, and you cannot just talk about it.
Joe and the band give a shit.
Joe Keithley running for office. I mean, this is one of the hardest things that you can do.
I care about this community, and that's one of the reasons why I got into politics.
This was the DOA school of actually trying to get stuff done and cultivate your audience to get a little smarter.
As a punker, it was better than going to school and taking social studies. Way better, because it's real stuff that people are experiencing.
I'm going to run again in 2022. You have to keep going and keep fighting for what's right. I think that's just the bottom line. When you think about it, it's like a David versus Goliath type story. Hey everybody, it's Joe from D.O.A. and this is Talkin Schmit, obviously.
It's cool, like tonight is the night.
Here we go again.
Just give it the old college try right now.
Big dog's in.
Schmitty.
96 times, Schmitty.
Thanks, Schmitty.
We on? Schmitty?
Talkin Schmit.
That's called go to the hospital, bitch. I'd be shitting my pants, lad.
Your Rolodex is fucking deep.
It's about the one.
Who is this guy who thinks he's tough shit?
What's up? We're tastemakers.
Come on, Schmitty, what the fuck?
Let's hear it for Greg Smith. Yeah!
We got a first here on the podcast. Last week, I interviewed my next guest for Thrasher, and in doing so, I suggest we do another one for the podcast, and he obliged. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the lead singer of the legendary punk band D.O.A. and the current city councillor of Burnaby, British Columbia, Canada. You may know him as Joey Shithead. This is Joey Keithley, everybody. Welcome back, Joey. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. That's great.
What, anything change?
Lots of stuff going on. Pipelines, COVID, trees being cut down that shouldn't be cut down, you know, that kind of stuff. I said we're in a super cold snap, so we've kind of been scrambling to get places for homeless people to stay. There's like an Arctic front coming down, well, from the Arctic, obviously, that's why they call it that. Uh-huh. And so, I mean, usually this is a real... we don't get a lot of snow up here, just a lot of rain. Our area is a lot like the weather's like Seattle, very similar, right? But now we have this super cold snap coming down, and I guess it's going down to minus 15, which in centigrade for American listeners here would be like 15 or something like that.
Damn.
Like maybe 10 degrees.
Yeah,
so it's getting really cold, and other parts of BC, then it'd be like minus 36 Fahrenheit, so that'd be like minus 20 or something like that.
Okay. Have you lived in that same zone your whole life?
Yeah, I grew up in the Vancouver area, right? So my hometown's Burnaby, which is like one suburb of Vancouver. Vancouver is the biggest city. I have been here. It's an area of about 2.5 million people. Yeah.
Okay. What was the first band you remember hearing as a little kid? Do you remember like getting your first album or like getting into music?
Yeah.
Going to a record shop or what it was?
Yeah, I think the first one I heard my older brother brought home Rolling Stones album. I think it's called Flowers, has Ruby Tuesday on it.
Okay.
And I was about like 9, and my brother was about 16. And I remember just playing that over and over again. And then I wanted to get some rock records, which my mother didn't like at all. So she got me a copy of a Chicago album. She figured that was rock, right? So she figured it was a bit more clean cut. And then it wasn't long before like we ended up with like Alice Cooper albums where he's hanging himself and stuff like that. It was pretty outrageous at the time, right?
So your brother kind of got you into music then?
Yeah, my sister actually more so. My older sister, she's like 12 years older than me, so it was like an artist, like art student, and it took me like 30 years to realize this, but she kept bringing home like protest music from the late 60s during the height of the Vietnam War, civil rights protests and stuff like that. I mean, we're Canadians, but this was like front and center on every TV, on every newspaper, every radio, what was going on in the United States, right? So, and she brought home protest folk music like Pierre, Paul and Mary, Bob Dylan, Pete Seeger, the Weavers. And I got all the lyrics on, but it took me 30 years to realize that's actually kind of where my politics came out, listening to that kind of music when I was a young kid, right? So, and then my brother who was in the middle brought home the rock music, right? So,
okay.
Yeah.
And then it was pretty early when you like gravitated toward playing music. Like you got an instrument, you guys started playing around?
Yeah, I was about 11, and my sister got married, and I was the only kid at the wedding, and they had a live band hired, and I became fascinated with the drummer. And the drummer was playing. I thought, this is so cool. So I spent the whole night where the adults were partying, drumming along on a chair, trying to imitate this guy who was drumming. And then it's this same usual story. I had a paper route, and I saved from the paper route and bought a drum set. And, it's been downhill ever since.
The first like legit band was the Skulls. Is that right?
Yeah, that was actually, we had a rock band. I mean, in high school, we had a band. It was called, we didn't have a name. We're the three of us. I was the drummer. And we were going to play like a noon hour thing. And we said, this thing's going to go over like a lead balloon. So we became known as Lead Balloon. And we were abysmal beyond belief. And then we tried to start, so terrible. And then we tried to start another band when we were like about 16, like Jerry Hanna and Brian Goebel from the Subhumans, Dimwit from D.O.A. and Subhumans, Four Horsemen. We all grew up within 3 blocks of each other. And we tried to start a band. It was like, so terrible, but so funny. I'd like to release like a single from it if I could find some tapes and just like I'd have to offer free earplugs with it. Like the worst crap you ever heard, right? But we were like 16 and we were trying. But the first we started a rock band. It was called Stone Crazy. So this is about 1976, and we did a few shows like kind of city fair type thing, outdoor type things, and high school stuff, lunch hour. And then we got our first professional gig in a little logging town in British Columbia called Merritt. And believe me, Merritt, BC is really without any merit on its own, right? It's like a total dump, right? So, and we got fired after one night, and we had this rock band called Stone Crazy, and it was weird because we played Led Zeppelin, Steve Miller, but we'd also throw in like Black Sabbath, which the people who came to the nightclub, like nightclub patrons, they didn't know us, and we played Paranoid, and we had loggers threatening to beat us up after that. I grabbed my amp and I grabbed the Marshall and turned everything to 10 and did the solo, and I gotta say I was about 18. The solo wasn't very good, right? And they threatened to kill us, right? So we got our ass fired out of there, sent home with $30, and on the way back we stopped and said, hey, this rock and roll thing's not all it's cracked up to be, right? And we were veterans of like 3 shooting shows or something like that, right? Experience. And so Dimwit said, hey, why don't we start a punk rock band? Because we've been listening, we had the Ramones, it was 76, so we had the Ramones' first album, and we've been listening to that, and like figuring out like Beat on the Brat and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dimwit, he said, we'll call the band Joey Shithead and the Marching Morons. And that was the kind of first incarnation type thing, right? And I became the singer somehow by default. I have no idea, right? And we never kept that name, but we morphed into the Skulls, which is like different than a lot of people know. And we played with them a few times too. A good band, the Skulls from Los Angeles, right? So who were like really in the early days as well, right? So
right. Do you think maybe you got pushed into singing because you guys found a drummer that was better than you, or do you think that you just wanted to start like singing and writing lyrics? Or
yeah, I think the thing with the drumming, Dimwit, that was just because what we used to do when we had our high school band, we would switch instruments. We'd have one set where I drummed, Dimwit would play bass, and Wimpy would play guitar, and Jerry Hanna from Subhumans would sing. And then the next set, I would play guitar, Dimwit would drum, and Wimpy would play bass. So we kind of went back and forth. And it turned out Dimwit turned out to be a great drummer, and I turned out to be. I think I looked up mediocre drumming the other day, and I give us a picture of me. I googled that, and that's like anyway. So then somehow I just got. We had a good guitar player, like who was like really sharp, Simon Warner, who later on went and played in a band in England called The Pack. Who put out a few kind of notable singles, 79, 80, 81, around there, right? So he was a much better guitar player than me because playing guitar until I was about 18 or 19. So I just said, okay, I'll be the singer, right? And it was a fun band. We had some originals, about 5 or 6 originals, and we learned a whole bunch of the first Damned album, Ramones songs, of course, and of course Iggy Pop, the king of all, right? So
sure. At that time, though, there's not a like huge amount of punk bands out there, right?
There was none around. We had heard about the Ramones, and the one thing, like, you remember the magazine Kerrang? Oh. Yeah, it was like a big magazine from the 80s and 90s. Okay, it's been out of business for like probably 25 years, right?
Okay.
But we were in this grocery store in the suburbs where we lived, and there's a picture of Iggy Pop on the front. And the caption was Iggy Pop, man or worm, right? So we got this magazine. So, that's punk rock. And then we got the first Ramones album and went, okay, so that's what that sounds like, right? And then we saw a little bit on TV about the Sex Pistols and the Damned and riots and, that kind of thing. And then the Ramones came to town. I think this was like summer, mid-77 or something like that. They were touring the first album, and they played a ballroom that held 1,000 people, 1,200 people, and I think they'd sold 2 tickets. So they hadn't exactly caught on. Let's say a 1,200 person place. Well, boys, you've sold 2. At least it's not 1, right? Said Danny Fields, the manager, right? So so they announced on the radio, "Come on down, see the Ramones for free," because the bar owner would at least wanted to get some sales from drinks, right?
Sure.
So about 100 of us with one summer night went to see the Ramones. The Lewd from Seattle opened up. The Ramones played the first album like start to finish, and that was kind of the whole show. They played about half an hour. It was over, right? And about the 100 of us, which is the start of the Vancouver scene, all walked out of there and went like, "Whoa, okay, so that's what punk rock is," because we'd heard about it, but we'd never seen it. So then we went, okay, I got it. It's fucking great, right? So and fun.
Is the Loot was Duff in that band?
No, Duff was the original drummer for the Fastbacks, and I could be mixed up. I think it was in the Farts as well, who was a great band right. From really. And then later on, I haven't heard it yet, but Duff just sent me like a new album they were working on from that time. He had a band called The Living. So there's going to be a release coming up sometime within the next, I don't know, 4, 6, 8 months or whatever, right? With the Duff on that. So that was he's still in Seattle before he moved to LA and became really famous, right? So
right. So how long is this school's last before it turns into DOA?
We started, I think, July '77, and then we in the wintertime we drove a motorhome, like a one-way drive-through from Vancouver to Toronto in November. And if you ever driven to Canada in the wintertime, it is hellacious, right? So we got out and we played around in Toronto for a while. We played with bands out there like the Ugly and the Vile Tones, like the early Toronto scene, like in winter of '77 going to '78. And the plan was we were supposed to move to London to make our big break there, right? London, England. So, Wimpy, bass player, and Simon Warren, the guitar player, moved. And for some reason, me and Dimwit, the drummer, decided not to move and moved back to Vancouver. And I apologize to this day, but we left those guys like high and dry. And Wimpy hawked his precision bass. They were like freezing in some cold water squat, right? And they both survived, right? And then so I went back to Vancouver. And in February of 1978, I put an ad in a local paper. Looking to start punk rock band, looking for bass player and drummer. I think the ad said "No wimps apply." No wimps need apply, right? Was a popular expression, 40 years ago, right? So, and so about February '78 we got going, right? So, kind of indirectly because one of the first guys to show up was Rampage, right? The bass player, obviously, right? Right? And but he showed up as a left-handed drummer, right? And it was cool because he'd do this like cross-hand, open-handed. Anybody's a drummer would know, like when you watch like left-handed drummers, they play open hand either way, whereas like a right-handed guy would play the hat, like crossover like that. And he was okay, like pretty decent, like accomplished. Then Chuck called me, like Dimwit's little brother, Chuck Biscuits, and so I'd like to try out. And he was great. He was only about 15 and a half years old, and he was like phenomenal. White Dimwit had been in Toronto with me and the Skulls, and Chuck had been practicing like crazy, right? So I went, wow, okay, this kid's great, right? And then what happened was, then I thought, Randy is a good drummer, but I bet I can teach him to play bass. So I got Randy a bass. I said, okay, so I'm going to show you how to play bass, right? So, because at this point I'd probably been playing guitar like 3.5 years. So obviously I was the ultimate pro at that point after 3 years experience, right?
Oh yeah,
I knew everything.
You had Paranoid on lock.
Me and Tony Iommi, right? We were close. Anyway, so and Randy was really adept, and like I say, I was a drummer, Randy was a drummer, and Chuck was a drummer supreme. So we had D.O.A. start with 3 drummers. So let's just say I think that's one of the keys about D.O.A. We always had a really sharp sense of rhythm and how to chug it out. And I think that was just that kind of approach because we're all drummers.
Did you guys ever? Did you ever do the switch around with D.O.A. where like different guys would play drums on a different song?
No, we didn't do that because Randy and I were just not even 1/10 the drummer that Chuck was.
He was phenomenal right out of the gates, huh?
Right out of the gate, yeah. He used to sit up when we practiced in Dimwit's garage in our hometown of Burnaby. Wimpy, Dimwit, and I would be practicing in the garage making this horrendous sound when we were like 15, 16. And his dad would be coming out banging on the garage door like, bam, bam, bam. Will you stop that goddamn noise all night long? Tape. Can't you learn another goddamn song? And then you look at his son, Dimwit, go like, why don't you get a trade like I did? Or join the Navy like I did. But anyways, I'm digressing here, right? But Chuck, there was a bunk, and Chuck would play along with us on bongo drums. And that's right for when he was about like 12. And that's where he got his first bit of drumming. So he's like following along on bongos, and then we hadn't seen him for like 6-8 months, and I'm like, whoa, this guy's a great drummer, right? And he got better as he went, right? So
amazing. Yeah.
Funny story, right? I mean, but everybody who grew up, because most of the people I know play music, we all learned to play guitar when we were like 12 or 14, right? I didn't. I waited until I was 18, but I was a drummer before that.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to get into a few songs, if we could.
Sure.
Maybe like pick a few songs, and then each song we could have like a little story about it, or what the lyrics mean, or just some background to it. I think it'd be a unique way to like look at the music, and then I can drop the song after we talk about it.
Sure.
Maybe we talk about the enemy, and then you tell the story of like where you were at that time and how the influencer.
Yeah. Okay. So the enemy, I just happen to have this here because I'm sitting in my office, came out on that album, Something Better Change.
Oh, sick. Right?
But I did find an earlier version of it. This is like a double album of early outtakes called 1978.
Nice.
And it's the enemy with the chorus is the same, but the second and third verse are quite different. And they're talking about like Nazis. Nazis kick them in the head because they are no fun. You got to know who your enemy is. So, I mean, that was a line that Chuck came up with, and we worked together and finished the song. And it's kind of like the all-purpose song. Like it's kind of the go-to D.O.A. song, if you ask me. All-encompassing. Everybody knows that one. It's like, okay, you got to know who your enemy is. It's just really clear. If you don't know who your enemy is, you'll just get conned, right? So,
is there like a story behind naming the band?
Yeah, it's a really funny story. So the three of us, okay, so Randy, Chuck, and I, this is our band. There was just like kind of a art space, like in a warehouse downtown Vancouver on the waterfront, like really, of course, the grittiest, dirtiest, and cheapest part of the entire city. That's where the artists were, right? So they would invite bands to play, and people come and hang out and have a few beers, and different bands would practice there. It was like free. We'd just show up with some gear and play. And this guy comes in, and he's got like a girl on each arm and a giant bottle of whiskey, and he's like standing there listening to us play. And we finished playing, and we go, "Hey, how you doing?" And he goes, "You know, guys are really good. I got a plan. You guys be the band. I'll be the singer. We'll call it D.O.A. and we'll make $1 million." And with the three of us, Chuck, Randy, and I looked at each other and went like, we had a little conference up on the side, like, and about 30 seconds went, okay, let's do it, right? That was the start of how D.O.A. got the name. And Harry Michelson, whose nickname was Harry Homo, so that was pretty funny. Harry was a great guy, but turned out was not a great singer.
Oh.
Yeah. So we had our first show. We opened up for a band. There's an old place called the Japanese Hall also on the waterfront in Vancouver. And I can't remember what band was playing. Oh, the Generators, right? And they had kind of rented the hall. They had the gear. They played a few shows. And we knew like 3.5 songs, because the fourth one we hadn't finished. So that's why I said it was like 3.5 songs. So I think it was about February 20th, 1978, maybe February 25th. And we asked these guys if we could get up and play a song using their gear. I had my guitar, and Randy has bass. He said, sure, yeah, go ahead. And then we'll finish the set in a little bit, and you guys go play. So we played the 3.5 songs, and we were a lot more crazy and out of control than those guys were. And then when we finished the 3.5 songs, we started playing them over again, right? And of course, these guys are going like, who the fuck are these guys? And they came up, and we got into this pushing and shoving match on the stage, and there's more of them. So they end up pushing us off. But I jumped up into the audience holding my guitar, and that was the end of the first D.O.A. show, right? So they booted us off the stage.
Damn. Yeah, I'm based here in San Francisco, and I believe you guys played one of your earlier shows here, right? Like at the Mabuhay?
Yeah, the Mabuhay Gardens, because what happened, we end up, so after only about 3 months, I arranged for us to record a single, right? Like actually a 4-song, 7-inch single. So like Disco Sucks was the name of the EP, and Nazi Training Camp, Woke Up Screaming, and Royal Police. So we got these back, 500 of these, and then I started going through like rock magazines to see where like radio stations were in magazines. And I just take a regular envelope, and I don't know how many of these singles arrived in one piece. They weren't padded. I put in an envelope. I wrote a little note. Hi, we're D.O.A. We're a punk rock band from Canada. Can we come and play in your town? or can you play this on your radio station? So, and we mailed probably like 100 of those out, like to London, to New York, Toronto, San Francisco, LA, Seattle, whatever. And so then we got this letter back and it said, "Oh, Disco Sucks is number one on KUSF, what was San Francisco radio station." Yeah, it was number one or number two. And of course, the university radio station doesn't mean you're selling any records at all, right? But we're going, whoa, we're number one on this radio station, right? Like, whoa, like we're pretty excited, right? And so I said, well, we heard about the Mabuhay Gardens, right? So I found the number. And I called up Dirk Dirksen, and who was the impresario, ran Mabuhay Gardens, the man, the legend, and said, "Sure, you guys can come down, play a weekend. We'll give you like no guarantee." And I think we got 10% of the door or something like that, right? And so we had two shows. They had Friday night. We opened for Ray Campy and the Rockabilly Rebels. So it wasn't really a punk rock crowd, but there was a little bit of that crossover between rockabilly and punk rock, like in the early days. I mean, there still is to this day, right? So I'll make this a really short story, but I had met Will Shatter just walking down the street. Like Brad, our guitar player at the time, hitchhiked with his guitar. Randy and Chuck took a bus, and I took a train from Vancouver down to San Francisco. That's how we arrived. So I got there first, and we didn't have any gear. So I met Dirk Dirksen, and he says, "Oh, yeah, I'm Joe from D.O.A. We're playing tonight." And he went, "Great. Where's your equipment?" And I said, "Oh, we didn't bring any." And Dirk went, "Let me ask you something." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are all you Canadians this stupid?" And I kind of went, "I don't know." So, but I'd happened to met Will Shatter, and we'd been spent about a day off and on wandering around the Fisherman's Wharf, like drinking as many beers as we could. And he just saw me. "Oh, look, it's a punk." And I went, "Oh, it's a punk. I better say hello," type thing, right? That's how you make friends. And so we became fast friends. And then he arranged for their gear, because it wasn't Flipper at the time, but it was Negative Trend. And they had a little practice space around the corner, not too far from the MAB in North Beach there. And we got a taxi and loaded as much gear as we could and took it up to the club, right? So we had gear to play. So that was great. Will saved us, right? And so what happened about halfway through our set, the Friday night, our first show down there, where people were like, they weren't really reacting really well. They were just like, "Okay, who are these idiots?" Right? We're from Canada, we're D.O.A. Whatever the stage manager was.
Number one on KUSF.
Yeah, don't forget that, folks. We're number one. Fuck you. Fuck, get off the stage. You know what I mean? So at this point, I've been drinking all day, so I decided to take a piss off the stage, and it went a long way, shall we say, right? And it became a thing of legend in the Bay Area for around that time anyways, right? And I guess Biafra had heard about this, and a few other people in the area, like, "Oh yeah, these crazy guys from Canada. One guy pissed off the stage, right?" type thing, right? And so the next night, then we opened up for the Avengers. And of course, it was like, what a great, one of my favorite bands of all time. The place was packed. And everybody got it. And then the next night, the Dead Kennedys were playing on a Sunday night. So the DKs invited us down, and we hung out there. And we made a really good impression in SF early on. Maybe not by normal means. Pissing off the stage. "Hey, kids, don't try this at home," or maybe even a nightclub either. Right?
That's amazing. So did you meet Jello on that initial trip, or not till later?
No, that trip too, because then the Sunday night at the DK show, this story goes on, I'll keep it short. I guess I smuggled beer in from the grocery store across the street, right? Because I didn't have the money to pay for beer at the MAB. And one bouncer came up and said, "Hey, you can't drink that in here." I kind of went, "Oh yeah," and I shook it up and I sprayed it into his face, right? And then next thing I know, I had 4 guys drag me out to the front door and threw me on the sidewalk, right? And I was like, and DKs they were on stage, right? Yeah, that's it. And Dirksen came out and went, Shithead, you're 86. You'll never come in this club again, you stupid idiot, right? And I went, Biafra said, stop the show. We're not playing until you let that Joey Shithead back in here, right? So Dirksen like kind of crossed his arms, went like, and scowled at me. And I knew at that point I had to behave. So then we became friends with Biafra, fast friends after that.
Wow, that's pretty fucking cool.
That was a crazy weekend.
Fuck, that sounds like it. Dead Kennedys, Avengers. That was your first time to SF, I'm imagining, yeah?
First time we ever played outside of Vancouver.
And so then later you recorded That's Progress with Jello on vocals.
Yeah, that's a great song. And they needed a song for the soundtrack for the movie Terminal City Ricochet, which is a movie that's hard to find. But I think there's a DVD version that you can get on order from Alternative Tentacles, right?
Okay.
So they probably still have them in stock. But it was a movie made in Canada about kind of futuristic, not a apocalyptic world, but just a screwed up look at the future, right? And so it was this one horrible town that was run by a dictator. Ross the Boss Glimmer was his name. So they needed a song for the intro of the soundtrack, the movie. So this Biafra said, well, I'm coming up here to act in this movie. Let's record the song. So we sat down at Profile Studios with Cecil English, who produced all sorts of stuff like SNFU, No Means No, D.O.A. And we did the song. It came out really well. And then Biafra had a part in the movie. So Biafra was in the movie. He's the head of the secret police, right?
Oh,
so
I got to check it out.
And I get a, yeah, it's pretty funny. Like I wouldn't call it like a great movie, but for the people that are in it, it's interesting. The soundtrack's really good. And I play like a cop in the movie where and you're not talking even normal, but a merciless one who had no regard for the public at all.
And so the song came out of making a soundtrack?
Yeah, for that. And then Biafra's coming back to work on something else. I can't remember what. And so I said, why don't we try to do a whole album together? So then that's when we came up with Last Scream and the Missing Neighbors.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great record.
What goes through your mind when the mayor declares DOA Day? Like, is this like, are you kidding me? Or did you see it coming? Or are you just like blown away? Like,
yeah, I didn't. We got a new mayor in Vancouver. I think this is 01. In fact, as a matter of fact, I was taking a look. The plaque is here now. I'll turn there it is right there.
Oh, nice.
Proclamation. Celebration of the 25th anniversary of DOA, signed by Mayor Larry Campbell.
That's amazing.
It was pretty funny, but Vancouver had this reputation, and I think that was in 01 or 02. Okay, that Vancouver's reputation as no fun city. Like he couldn't do anything. And the mayor had just got elected new mayor and got rid of the old guy. And some of the councillors were like pretty hip. One was a friend of mine, Jim Green, and we had done activist stuff together to help people from getting kicked out of their houses and stuff like that, right? So so he initiated this DOA Day and came down at a club. I was doing a show, pulled out the scroll, and whereas the punk band DOA celebrates the 25th anniversary this month, whereas DOA was formed in the midst of the punk rock revolution anyways, right? There's about 12 of these whereas things, right? So, and I didn't see that coming at all, but it was really cool.
That is really cool. Okay, we don't usually on the show here talk politics, but let's talk a little politics because I'm intrigued with your opinions on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Something that's close to me is the homelessness. SF has a real bad problem right now. I know it's one of your priorities too. And creating more affordable housing or whatever, what needs to be done to fix this problem? It's a huge problem. I think everywhere probably, but SF has a huge one. I don't know what Vancouver's like, but yeah.
No, I mean, all the way up and down the coast, like San Diego has a huge homeless problem. Seattle, Vancouver, my hometown, like the whole area, right? I mean, really the thing is that because we live on the nicest areas of the continent for Canada, this is the mildest area. Like we haven't had one day of snow yet this year, right? So, and so a lot of people gravitate towards here because you can live outside, right? It's not great, but you can, right? So the thing is that because housing prices have gone so out of control, I mean, like San Francisco Bay Area with the .com boom, Silicon Valley, and the values have gone up. So it's not just that homeless people can't get homes, it's that middle class people can't afford homes, right? So everybody's getting driven out of the city. So the only new places that are being built in the city are really just being bought up by offshore people, and putting money in buying up apartments, luxury places, said places we used to hang out in Vancouver. Now, the house was like, $110,000. That house is $2 million now. Like, that one, I can think of one in a kind of a hip area of Vancouver, like when I was 20, that I could have bought for 90 grand. It's worth over 2 million now, right?
Yes,
so
SF similar.
Yeah. So having said that, the things to do is to create a whole bunch of forms of housing, whether it's like laneway or row housing, or even like temporary, like some of the stuff we're doing here in Vancouver and in Burnaby is modular housing. And that's really kind of where for homeless people. And we just opened one here, 50 rooms, a modular housing unit that is for battered women. Right. So stuff like that, people that need help, like really need help. Right. So, and it's a funny thing in a sense that some people go like, oh, God, now why should we build houses for these people? They're homeless. They don't pay taxes. I pay taxes all my life. You know what? They're human beings. Right. So we got to look after them. Right. So, but the other thing, too, is the big thing is kind of what you hear this all the time is the missing middle. So you got to find ways to address that. So some of the stuff we're doing up here, we found 6 large properties within the city of Burnaby, and we're not selling them or giving them, but we're leasing them for 99 years to housing societies. So then you have below market rental places that will go to the homeless, to seniors, to disabled people, to indigenous people, and they'll be first in line to move into these places. And we can't build them fast enough. That's what the problem is, right? Because there's more people moving in. I just saw a population projection 2 days ago here. We're 2.5 million people in the area. It's going to 30 years from now or 20 years from now, it's going to be 3.5 million.
Right.
So that's an awful lot of housing to build. Hey, it comes the same old thing. If you got more money than other people, then you got to put in your fair share and help our people out.
Yeah. One of the obvious ones is for the billionaires to just I mean,
there's a lot of things we could do with the billionaires better than they're doing right now, but we can cover that in detail if you want.
Well, I was curious, did you always vote? Have you always believed in this, like growing up, or did that change at some point where you got more into like this whole deal?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a funny thing because the D.O.A. has a bit of like a kind of a bit of an anarchist reputation type thing, right? In a sense, with the style of songs, the art, stances we've taken. But the thing is that I voted in every single election I could since I was like 18 years old. And it's kind of like, even though sometimes it won't change a lot, if you don't vote, in a sense, you almost lose your right to bitch about who's in there, right? Even though, like you might live in it, and I'm not saying you got to vote right, left, middle, or whatever, but if you don't get out there and exercise your democratic right, and here's the key thing, you got to think one of my heroes is Joe Hill, who wrote all the union songs back in the 10s, 20s, and 30s of the previous century, and he was the songsmith for the International Workers of the World, right? And during his time when they were doing this, like setting up unions and helping people and getting like an 8-hour day and some sort of provision where people weren't dying in these heavy industrial jobs, or less people dying, that people went to jail for the right to vote. People got killed for the right to vote. So if you don't honor that, you're missing the point. And I'm not a big backer of these big party systems. Like they say, if I was in the States, I'd be voting for the Democrats. But there's lots wrong with the establishment of the Democratic Party, no doubt about it, right? It's a hierarchy, and they control it. But if you look at like the voter registration drive in Georgia, to me that's like, okay, that's a really positive thing, because you got disenfranchised people that actually got to change the scenario at least a little bit. So you only get incremental changes, but incremental change is better than no change.
Yeah. And like a lot of people think like, oh, we're just voting for, let's say, the president. But no, there's all these local things that are, like last time I talked to you, didn't you say you won by like 290 votes or something? Yeah,
I got in by 270. I got 17,000 votes, and I got 8th place out of 8 council spots. And my nearest opponent was only 270 votes behind me.
So votes do matter, like that.
It was close. It's like, have you ever, if any fans, Futurama out there, they're having the election, and it's Richard Nixon being kept alive. He's running for president of the world, and whoever the other opponent is, and all the humans vote for the Nixon's opponent, except for Leela and Fry. But then the robot vote comes in, and they all vote for Nixon. So Nixon wins by 1 vote. So you got to look up that episode. It's pretty funny, right? So
I will. I definitely will. Do you know anything about this guy, Beto ORourke?
I do. Yeah, Beto ORourke. That is a good segue, because the documentary Something Better Change. We did an interview with Beto. He's going to be in the film. Yeah. So Scott Crawford, the filmmaker, knew somebody in DC and connected with Beto. And when I heard Beto was running for president, this a year and a half ago or whatever, or running for Senate, I went like, well, a guy who was in kind of a punk rock band, rides a skateboard, been arrested a couple of times. To me, that's qualification to become president, right? You know what I mean? Like, so, yeah, because he approaches things kind of differently, right? And compare him to a guy like Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is like one of the worst human beings on the face of the earth, right? Yep. And Beto ORourke almost beat him in a super red state. So I hope that Beto runs again, wins the Senate seat in Texas next opportunity he has. But he's a good guy, and it's like really, you need some different type of people, and it's like, as I say, that you got to get outside the establishment when you're looking for politicians. So, I mean, I kind of tell people when I was running, and I will again when I run for re-election next year, that, I'm not your typical politician. And now I know that's a typical line, and everybody tries to use that one. That's the one that, but you know what? Yeah, I played in a punk rock band for over 40 years, and I still play in a punk rock band. And the whole thing we said about racism, about women's rights, about the environment, that type of approach I took in D.O.A, I'm still taking that type of approach in like politics, right? So why should that change just because I got elected?
Right. Yeah, that's true. The thing that I see on the flip side of that is people say, well, we tried to go that route with Trump and it didn't work. Like, let's get the guy that's not a politician.
Well, yeah, that took it. I agree. That took it to the extreme, right? So, well, not every theory is perfect, shall we say? Yeah, there's an exception to every rule.
Well, let's talk about the documentary.
Sure.
What is it going to encapsulate? Is it like your whole story? Is it mostly just the political part, or what's going on with it?
It's got everything in it. It starts over the early days of D.O.A, and we've been. I think I went through. Just COVID started. I had time to do this. I had about 250 VHS tapes of various D.O.A things, that like old school stuff that's just sitting there. So we're transferring them right now, so we can get some like footage from like the early days, and use that in the film. So there's that stuff, and then it will go through the middle period. I mean, D.O.A's been around like a hell of a long time, and then it will encapsulate along the way the activism that D.O.A was involved in, or I was involved in. We do have film of that. They were captured, like, DOA was a newsworthy band in Canada. And so there's like, there was quite a few news clips of us doing stuff like for environmental causes, for education, for stuff against racism, right? So we encapsulate that, and then it will go into like where I got elected. And then a big chunk of the film towards the end. I mean, I don't know how Scott's going to cut it together exactly, but he's the director. I'm just the band guy, right? So then we will go on my re-election campaign, which is next year. So he's going to follow that in late 2022, and then the film will be out in 2023.
Oh, nice. And this is the guy, he worked with Minor Threat, right? Did he do Salad Days? Or?
Yep. Yeah, he's the director of Salad Days, and I asked Ian if he was square, and Ian gave the thumbs up, so that was a good sign. Yeah, I did. That's what I thought too, right? If Ian had said something bad, I was going like, okay, but no. So that was really good, and I think the end of the film, if I don't get reelected, I still got my guitar. If I get reelected, I'm reelected, and I still got my guitar. I'm still playing.
Okay. I know that like some bands have a clause like if you get into a band, you can't, or like an actor is a better one. Acting, you can't skateboard during when we're filming because you might get hurt. In politics, is there a clause like you can't tour in a punk band?
I think they'd probably say, please do. Maybe you will get hurt and not come back. No, nothing like that. The clothes I wear have changed. I do wear a suit frequently, at City Hall, which I've never worn a suit my entire life, and I've never worn hard-soled shoes. And I usually never comb my hair. Before I go to City Hall, I have a comb in my van. I have an old Dodge van. And, when I get there, people go, "Oh, hi, Councillor Keithley." The first few times that happened, I was like, "Huh?"
Did you have to do a YouTube tutorial on how to do the tie?
Oh my God! I was one campaign previous. We had this debate, and it was a pitched battle. I was trying to get this nomination. I failed by like 4 votes or something like that. Yeah, and I was just getting my suit on, and then I said to Ryan, who's my niece's husband, I'm going, Ryan, I don't know how to tie this tie. And he's going like, I'm not sure either, right? Ryan's probably about 25 at the time. Mm-hmm. So he's sitting there, we're over at his house, and he's going like, okay, I think that looks okay. All right, good enough. But no, I'm good with it now.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, it took some thinking.
I was actually going to ask you, I didn't ask you this, because when you guys first started, and probably for a big portion of that, this is pre-internet that we're talking about. So how was touring without like knowing really where to go? Were you just sending like the college radios? Like how would you line up a tour?
Yeah, that's interesting. I say, well, I phoned the Mabuhay. That was our first trip. And then the next tour we had, this thing was a big Rock Against Racism show in Chicago at Lincoln Park, right by the Bears Stadium on the lake there. And Patti Smith band was playing, and people from all over the Midwest, about 5,000 people showed up. So this is like June 79 or something like that, right? And an anarchist friend of mine, a guy who managed the Subhumans up here, actually got us on the bill. And so we drove out there. So I phoned down, I arranged a gig in Seattle. Hey, can we come down and play here? Sure, we'll give you $50 or whatever, right? Gig in SF, and then I called down to Texas. The first time I went to Texas, and I arranged 3 shows. One at Raoul's in Austin, which is a famous place there, and I had one in Houston, Dallas. But then I forgot to call back and reconfirm. So at that point, only the Austin show, the other 2 places canceled. They went, who is this jerk type thing, right? So, so we ended up in Chicago with this Rock Against Racism, and we'd done like 3 shows. We were starving. Like we had no gas money. We had no food. And this one guy let us stay at this place. And we ate all this food, drank every bit of alcohol that was in the place. And finally he went like, you guys have another show? I went, oh, yeah, sure. I think we got one in New York, right? So we phoned up these yippies, and there was a place called Bleecker Street, number 10 Bleecker. And it was a half a block from CBGB's, like on a side street there. And we got there a week before the show and lived in this warehouse. And I think we had $20 to our name. So what we do the $20 the first night, we went out and spent it on beer, and then we starved for the next 6 days waiting for the show, and for our first show in New York. And then I phoned up. We found 3 shows in Ottawa and 1 in Toronto, and then from Toronto to Vancouver, it's 3,000 miles. We just drove straight back.
Damn.
And so I think we did 8-9 shows. Took like about a month. That was our first North American tour. But later on, it kind of got a bit of a network, and this was like we ended up doing a lot of shows with Black Flag, so that became good friends with those guys. And so it was like Chuck Dukowski, the bass player, who did most of the arranging. He was sort of like, okay, he was flying out the tours at the time, and so I would change numbers with Chuck, and he'll go like, don't go to that show in Sacramento. That guy will never pay a dime, right? Can't Tell Productions. And we went, I can't tell what you're going to get paid if you're going to get paid anything. Anyway,
yeah,
some old timers out that way. We're out in the Valley, remember that. And then we would just go like, this guy's good. That guy's a rip-off, and we just like trade the contacts back and forth, because those guys were touring get crazy just like D.O.A. was. They'd just hop in a van, just go.
So reputation's good and bad kind of just went through the phone lines. Like, hey, what's up in Colorado? Don't go to Denver, go to Boulder, like whatever.
Yeah. And just like, you'll get ripped off. This guy,
Interesting.
One of the guys, what the hell? We were at the old Vex in LA, and was Nikki Sixx came up and said, oh, yeah, you guys are great. And this was before Motley Crue got famous, right? I can get you a show out in San Bernardino, right? And went, oh, okay, cool, we have a night off. And he went, okay, I'll see you tomorrow night. Or something. He's going to promote a show in one day or something like that, right? And as soon as he left, somebody else went like, don't do that show. That guy just fucking ripped me off, right?
Yeah.
When you got a vibe about people, right? You had to follow your instincts. It was like they're frontiersmen or something like that. Like you just keep driving. You didn't know if you were going to encounter a show, police, whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've told the story before, but my first time to Vancouver, we graduated from high school. We got my Volkswagen bus, me and my friend, and we just drove up there because we knew there were skate parks up there. We had no idea where we were staying. We didn't know where anything was, nothing. And we just pulled into the town. We went to a park. We met this dude, and he's like, hey, my parents are gone for a week. You can stay with us. And just shit like that happens on the road,
it does.
know? So
it does. Like I say, my first time in San Francisco, I just saw Will Shatter walking down the street, and I went like, oh, hey. He went, hey. And he saved us, right? That's just one of those things.
Right.
Or our old manager, Ken, he used to go like, me or Randy would be driving, and we'd go, okay, where's the show? He said, no, I don't have the address. And we go, well, we're supposed to be at a show. What's the address? And he would go, just drive into town and look for punks.
Exactly.
It's, and that's what you did, right? Play it by ear. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about punk rock in 2020? Like the bands?
I think it's fine. I think there's a lot of kids out there that are starting new bands that are really well-meaning. There's political activism involved. I think that's still really alive, right? People are really conscious of what's going on in the world. So I'm glad to see that sort of fighting spirits there. Don't ask me to name like a half a dozen of my new favorite bands. I am terrible at that, admittedly. But man, we see lots of great bands as we go, like kid bands that are like just starting out and just think like, yeah, if you keep at, then maybe you'll get a career out of it and do something good. You never know. You just gotta, to the new bands, I just go like, hey, if somebody ever asks me for advice, I just go like, the best thing is stay true to yourself. Whatever you want to play, just play that. Get better and better. And if it's good, people are going to discover it sooner or later. If it's not good, then whatever, you'll go on and do something else, or you'll start another band, right? It's like, you use your skill somewhere else, right? So
yeah, that is the key to life. Stay true to yourself. Everything, like everyone I talk to, that's one of the big keys. Like if you fake it, people are going to fucking see right through your shit.
Oh yeah. It's also like when you see the older bands too, when they, like lots of old, not now because of COVID, but lots of older bands try around making a comeback, right? Which is great to see some of the old hands. And sometimes you see, wow, they're really great. Or sometimes you're like, wow, they're really just mailing it in.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a quick payday, right? So whatever. I mean, people have all sorts of different reasons for doing it. It's not up to me to deny any of it. But if you're not up there like really going at it, the audience just has a way of picking up on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah.
Okay.
There's a smell. There's a smell test.
Yeah.
Let's play another song.
Yeah. Okay. So another one off this album, Something Better Change, that I really like. It's called "Woke Up Screaming," and that's about my getting beat up by the police in Vancouver at our local haunt, the Smiling Buddha, and it kind of deals with that. So that's one of my favorite old songs. We play it once in a while, so sometimes live, but that's a cool song. World War III has always been like that's been like a great song that everybody knows. It's like if you think about militarism in our world, I mean that never stops. I mean that's the kind of thing about D.O.A. that people say, well, Joe, what are you singing about now? I mean, you're singing 40 years ago. And say, well, 40 years ago, we were singing about racism, sexism, greed, militarism. 40 years later, we're singing about racism, sexism, greed, militarism. Right? It's like, so it's kind of like, I always, Greg, I always thought that the world was a screwed up place when we started. I just didn't know how screwed up it was. It took me a while before I realized, there's a lot more to it, a lot of layers there of hatred, of bias, of idiocy, right? So this record, everybody knows this one, Hardcore One, got lots of good songs. One we always play, D.O.A., that's a go-to. That's a good story with that one. Okay, so some show really early days, and that I was sitting on my front porch, like out in the suburbs. I had this little shack, and the only way you got heat in the wintertime, you had to build a fire, and to build a fire to heat up the water. So in the summertime, you had this fire going in the kitchen. It was like 100 degrees out to get any hot water in the house. You're talking like a shack built in the 1930s, right? But it became kind of a bit of a party place. And after some show, some guy came by. I was just sitting there. And he says, hey, man, I saw you. And this is nowhere near where the show was. I saw your show last night. You guys are great. I wrote these lyrics. And it was the lyrics to D.O.A. And he just handed me the piece of paper. And I went, whoa, that's pretty good. And I never saw the guy again. Or if I did, he never said, hey, you stole my song. He kind of just gave me the song. He says, please use it. And so that was just like an odd story. That's like to me, that's one of the best D.O.A. songs ever, right? D.O.A. by D.O.A.
Would you tend to open up with D.O.A. or The Enemy, or close with one of those? Or
I think lately we've been doing I can't remember what we've been open with lately, but usually by 3 or 4, that's when we do The Enemy and Class War. And then 5 would probably be 2+2, a bit slower song on the first album.
I like 2+2 a lot.
Yeah, it's a good song. And then number 6 would be World War III. Then we'd probably at that point, go for Liar for Hire, off Warrant 45, maybe a couple new ones. And at the end, it's like it would always end with The Prisoner. Pretty well every time, except when we're at a festival. And you can't at a festival, you can't do an encore. You're opening up for some giant band or whatever, right? And so then it would end with the Prisoner, and then fucked up Donald, fucked up Ronnie, fucked up Baby, fucked up Thatcher, fucked up Bush. It's had the main name. It's a really useful song, right? Yeah. So but originally it was like You're Fucked Up Baby, and then became You're Fucked Up Ronnie.
Yeah.
And then we changed it when we're in the UK. We used to do Fucked Up Thatcher. That was last time I was in the UK at Rebellion. I saw my favorite shirt of all time. It was this older punk. He was probably about 60. And his T-shirt on and said, I still hate Margaret Thatcher.
Unbelievable. My fiance made me, she escorted me through The Crown. And so I got to see Margaret Thatcher, and wow, like even my fiance, who's really like the sweetest woman ever, and she's just like, I don't like her.
watching The Crown at home. It's the Royals are a pretty amazing bunch,
Insane.
And I don't mean that much in a complimentary way, right?
Wow. Yeah. It was very eye-opening, to say the least. So the end will be The Prisoner.
Yeah, and then the encore would probably be like Disco Sucks, for sure. That's in there. Okay. Police Brutality, which is from a Northern Avenger. You might hear a version of Folsom Prison Blues, like a very fast version of Folsom Prison. I'm a massive Johnny Cash fan, right? And and probably then you'd hear probably Fucked Up Donald, which has been lately, but not. We'll probably ask the audience next time we get out on tour. We're gonna play Hardcore 81 from front to back, and when we get to Fucked Up Ronnie, we're gonna ask the audience what version they want to hear. We'll take like an impromptu poll.
Fucked Up Trump.
Yeah. Okay. Which of you yells louder, right? So,
okay.
Yeah. So hopefully later this year, that's what we're doing. We do that album verbatim, right? So.
Okay. Well, last one. Me and my friends have this ongoing conversation, and there's never the right answer, I don't believe. But I kind of anticipate I know what your answer is going to be. But basically, the greatest American punk band of all time.
You know what? I think for the influence and for the innovativeness, I mean, I have lots of favorite ones. I mean, I love the DKs, love Bad Brains, love the Circle Jerks, the Avengers, Adolescents, Minor Threat. I mean, and lots of bands that are like way less known than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably, like I said, I think we talked previously, and throughout my career, I think I've seen about 14,000 bands, something like that, right? So, but my favorite band, because especially in the early days, was Black Flag. Because the way Greg played guitar, the way Robo played drum, and the way Chuck played bass, because it was just like, we watched it because D.O.A. was like a sped up rock band, right? In a sense, like like a really super fast backbeat, and that's kind of our sound, right? So that works for us. But those three guys, with their various singers, and we played with all incarnations from
Dez and Henry and
Dez to Keith to Ron to Henry, right? And but those three guys just had a unique way of tackling the rhythm, and Greg, of course, is very innovative on guitar as well, right? So, to me, yeah, the really early stuff, like the first 4 years, right? That is a masterpiece, right?
So good, yeah, that one.
And live, they were great too. Yeah, and but I say there's a lot of close seconds too, right? So.
Is which era of Black Flag, which singer is your favorite?
Well, they're all good. They're all good. Don't get me wrong. Keith was great. But the funniest was Dez. And he's probably the least known. And I'm good friends with Ron. Ron lives in my hometown here, and I presume he voted for me. I hope he did. He came out and did a bunch of vocals on a couple of D.O.A. albums, couple albums ago, right? So nice. Ron's a great guy. He lived up here for years. But Des was funny because he'd go like those guys we go to their warehouse in I guess it was in Santa Monica where SST was, and they would practice before the day of a show for 6 hours, then come out and play. It was like insane, right? And then Desiree up there screaming. The monitor guy would go like, "Oh, have you got enough vocals in your monitor?" And Desiree would go like, "Turn the monitors off. I don't want to hear anything." And he would just scream, right? So, so we had a hilarious time with them out in Toronto a couple years ago because they toured as Flag. So everybody was there except for Ron and Greg, right? Stephen Egerton was playing guitar, and he was great. And Bill Stevenson was drumming, and Bill's an incredible drummer too, of course, right? So, but it was a great hanging out, and got a chance to. There's actually time after the show to sit down and talk with all those guys, who a bunch of them I hadn't seen for years. And then upstairs in the same club where we played, there was a smaller room, and then Agnostic Front were playing up there. So it was like a really over the top evening. It was like a ton of fun, right? So yeah.
Oh,
but
okay.
every one of their lineups was great, right? So and it's just like,
I only saw him with
I just
Rollins.
dug it right, and and which was great too. Like Henry's a heck of a guy, right? It's just like and you know what? I gotta say, a lot nicer than maybe his public persona indicates. He's a nice guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who is
Some people might be afraid of like, I'm Henry Rollins, right? I don't know. I always thought he was a nice guy, right?
Yeah. Is Devo in the conversation for you?
Well, yeah, I guess we kind of skipped over that because when the whole thing started, it was punk rock and new wave. That's a really good point, right? So, because the first bands we heard were really like Richard Hell and the Voidoids, for example, like the early New York scene, Blondie. They're all doing gigs together at CBGBs and whatever other place they could find out there, right? And but we heard Devo, and that record was great. And they came played in Vancouver. We had this really cool, like I said, the same ballroom where the Ramones played. It's called the Commodore. So every one of the local bands got to open up. So the Dish Rags, young woman, they were about 16 at the time, they got to open up for the Clash there. D.O.A. opened up for Ramones at a subsequent show when it was full. And our friends at Point Six got to open up for Devo, which was like great. Yeah, Devo was like wonderful. Like the first couple records, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know if the other records are as great, but whatever. It's like they're still a really innovative band. I mean, there's ton of innovative bands, right? And at the time when we first did shows, you would have like a punk band, an artist, maybe a reggae band, and then a new wave band, and maybe a noise band, and that'd be the show. And that's the only way you could even get 50 people, because when the scene was really young, and then you got 100 people, and then by 82, 83, it was much more broken up into segments, and by 85, it wasn't as fun as it had been maybe during the first 5 years, right? But yeah, that's really, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a really cool part of punk rock. Was like, the thing is about not being loud, not being fast, not looking like a punk. The thing about punk rock, what makes it great, is being open-minded and open to being like the experimentation of the music, right, and the people within it, and interaction with the fans too. Yeah, to me, that's a key part of what drew me into it. And self-expression.
Yeah,
it's one of the best at self-expression.
Much like skateboarding.
It took me a while to figure that out. Yeah. I mean, you find something, you got to find your own way to do it, right? So it's like, there's a common community out there, which I'm sure you found like skateboarding, right? So absolutely, right? So, so it's been a great thing, and I love playing punk rock, and I'll just keep playing as long as I can, right? So,
That's good, man. Hey, I've really enjoyed talking with you and hearing all these stories. It feeds into everything I love. And I think I was really stoked that we got to do this, especially after doing the first interview for the mag. It's a little quicker. This one is a little more elaborate and just feels really good for me. Me and my fiance are huge documentary buffs, so we're definitely going to be, anxiously waiting that. And let's just put a song on and ride out of here. What song should we end with? Should we end with The Prisoner, like keep it like that, or put something else on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a great way to go out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for taking the time, and good luck with everything.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thanks for the time, and keep on.
Cheers.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Talkin Schmit. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. When you subscribe, you'll get notifications every Tuesday of new episodes the minute they become available. Also, please leave reviews and a 5-star rating. It's the best way to help the show grow. All of the episodes will always remain free, but if you would like to help support the show, you can do so at TalkinSchmit.com, where you can pick up some merchandise like t-shirts, beanies, hats, and stickers. The website has an entire archive of all of the episodes, with extra photos and videos. Email us with any suggestions, comments, or ways that the show may have improved your life at talkinschmit@gmail.com. All interviews are conducted, edited, and produced by Schmitty. The intro music is Mary's Cross by the band Nature. Very special shout out goes to the executive director, Sharal Camisa.
Shout out.
Love it!
This is Talking Schmit, where the Rolodex is deep, but the conversation is deeper.